Hello, good morning, students. Have a nice day. Today I am going to start a new story. The name of the story is Living or Dead. This story is written by Rabindranath Tagore, very well known, famous storyteller, poet, dramatist, and author of several books. This story is very important, relevant so far as the question of identity of women in the society is concerned. I introduce myself as Dr. R.S.R.BHARGAVA Associate Professor, Department of English. The title of the story, as we know, Living or Dead. Living or dead, both are contradictory, and Rabindranath Tagore has tried to make a difference between the crisis of identity. This story moves around a female, the female Kadambini, who is considered as living or dead in the eyes of society. She dies one day and people think that she is no more. But in the graveyard, she is taken back and she survives. She arrives home, but she is considered as dead. So I have tried to summarize the story and analysis followed. Summary: Kadambini is a widow with no child who has an incredibly close relationship with her brother-in-law's son. Kadambini is a widow with no child who has an incredibly close relationship with her brother-in-law's son. A deep affection develops between them, as strong as the bond between a mother and son. But one night, Kadambini suddenly dies. In the beginning, we see that Kadambini is introduced as a widow without child, but she has a deep affection for the son of her brother-in-law. The family calls for 4 Brahmins who take her to a temple where her body will await ritual cremation. But that very night, while her watchmen are out smoking, looking for firewood, her body stars. Kadambini awakens from death and walks out. In the cremation process, she comes back. Having come back to life, Kadambini finds herself in a strange in between. She wants to return home but tells herself that she is not alive and knows she would not be welcome to return. She realizes that even though the living fear the dead fear the living as well. In her wandering, she is found by a woman who believes she comes from a good family and wants to help her get home. She moves from one place to another and she wants a shelter, but she is unable to show her identity. While Kadambini doesn't think she can return home, she asks the man to take her to the house of her childhood friend Yogamaya. Yogamaya is another friend. The man complies, and when Kadambini arrives, Yogamaya is overjoyed. Kadambini offers to work as a servant in her house, but Yogamaya refuses and invites her to stay. Now Yogamaya is her friend. She reaches there and feels very happy, but her friend does not allow her to be a servant but a friend in her home. But that time Kadamini stays in Yogamaya's house is strange. Increasingly, the house is visited by ghosts. Kadamini herself feels like she is dead. She can't enjoy living in her friend's house. After a period of time, Yogamaya gets fed up with Kadamini's presence and demands to know why her husband has not questioned Kadamini living in their house. But after some time, Kadamini's presence appears a boredom to Yogamaya. So the husband embarks on a journey to Kadamini's family house to find out why she isn't living there. So, husband of Yogamaya tries to know the presence in her own home. What he finds out is that Kadambini in fact died. Yogamaya doesn't believe it, but late at night, while the two are quarreling about the matter, Kadambini comes to confirm that she did indeed die. When both husband and wife were talking about the identity or existence of Kadambini, she comes and tells them reality. They kick her out of the house and Kadambini returns home. Her brother-in-law's son is glad to see her and she finally feels alive again. But everyone else is petrified of her presence, begging her to leave the boy alone. Kadambini tries to convince them that she is alive, but they refuse to believe it. Kadambini assures everyone that she is still alive, but nobody believes. Finally, she throws herself into a well in the courtyard and dies there. It is only by dying that she was able to prove that she was alive. Nobody was prepared, ready to accept that she is alive. But when she compelled her to put her into the well, she wanted to show the people that she was still alive, but she was trying to prove that she is going to die. And now we have an analysis. The story Living and the Dead combines two of Tagore's common short story forms, the supernatural tale and the ironic parable. Of course, the story has a supernatural element. It's full of irony because supernatural atmosphere like the appearance of ghosts, the appearance of Kadambini both in the form of living and dead, the panic, the terror in which the people were living, in which the family of Yogamaya and her husband living is full of supernatural machinery. And there is a story having irony because in the society everyone thinks that she is died, and even Kadambini tries to prove that she is died, but she is going to die really throwing herself into the well. This is irony. Here Tagore plays with the idea of being stuck between life and death, also explored by way of the man in the loincloth in the thoughtlessness as well as Chandra in punishment. This time using the troupe to explore the state of ghostliness. The idea of thoughtlessness is very important. We see Kadamini wandering aimlessly and deeply concerned about how she will be received by the people who were close to her prey to death. Wandering of Kadambini without any aim tries to convince the people that she is still living, alive. Indeed, even though they see someone who looks like a living woman, they refuse to take her as such and are deathly afraid of her. Because her absence for some time in the house and her presence suddenly makes the people afraid. The irony is that indeed she is alive. Physically she is present, but spiritually, mentally, the people think herself as dead. If ever so improbably, the narrator tells us that this happens from time to time, but the character in the story are not so enlightened. Even though, for example, Yogma accepts her old friend as perfectly alive for the majority of their time together, we see that Yogmaya accepts her as old friend. It's right, and majority of the time they spent together. She can no longer see Kadamani as anything but a ghost when she learns of her previous death. But whenever the actual or reality comes before Yogmaya, she also feels afraid, scared of her presence, feeling that she is a ghost, learning about her previous death. Tagore's depiction of understanding here is strange, wry, and ultimately understated claim that preconceptions can work rather unintuitively to render the people we see right in front of us into the type of people they are not. Rabindranath Tagore, the writer, has tried to depict the real positions, the conceptions in a very transparent manner because the people try to see the difference between the right and the wrong. The changing of way one sees someone else is explored in Kabuliwala as well. Kabuliwala is another story of Rabindranath Tagore in which there is idea changing. When the narrator talks about no longer seeing the Kabuliwala as a would-be murderer but as a father likes him. In both the story and this one, the capacity to see people for what they really are as in a question. And in this odd parable, Kadambini ultimately has to change herself to fit the idea people have of her. So there is idea changing, thoughtlessness, and the idea of the people, how they feel about her. And lastly, she must throw herself into a well and finally achieve the death in order to be recognized as having been alive. So Kadambini feels very confused that while existing in this real physical world, she is considered as ghost, dead, and she tries to prove herself alive so many times, but every time she fails. Lastly, she tries to prove that she plugged or threw herself into the well and got death. And this event influenced the people understanding regarding that she was alive and today she has been died not only in the eyes of the society but also in the people of the family, members of the family. So students, you have taken the lesson very seriously and listened my lecture carefully. Thanks for your nice cooperation because Rabindranath Tagore tried to prove the identity of crisis in the story very well. Thanks once again.